The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Windsor Castle as Queen Camilla walked slowly through the private quarters that once belonged to Queen Elizabeth II. It had been months since the beloved monarch's passing, yet these rooms remained largely untouched as if frozen in time. The palace had been gradually sorting through the late Queen's personal belongings, a delicate process that required both respect and careful attention to detail. Camilla paused at the ornate mahogany desk where Elizabeth had spent countless hours reading state papers and writing personal correspondence. The surface was still neat, with a few fountain pens arranged precisely as they had been left. But today, something caught Camilla's eye that she hadn't noticed during previous visits to these sacred chambers. Behind a small portrait of the young Princess Elizabeth with her beloved corgis, there appeared to be a slight gap in the wood paneling. Curious, Camilla gently moved the frame aside and discovered what seemed to be a hidden compartment. Her heart raced as she realized this could contain something of great significance. The royal family had always known that the late Queen was full of surprises, keeping certain traditions and secrets close to her chest. With trembling fingers, Camilla carefully opened the concealed space. Inside, wrapped in rich purple velvet, was an exquisite jewelry box she had never seen before. The box itself was a work of art, covered in intricate gold designs and adorned with what appeared to be genuine precious stones. It was surprisingly heavy for its size, suggesting it contained something substantial within. As she lifted the mysterious box from its hiding place, Camilla noticed an envelope tucked beneath it, sealed with the late Queen's personal wax seal. The envelope bore her name written in Elizabeth's distinctive handwriting. This discovery sent chills down Camilla's spine. Why would the late Queen have hidden something specifically for her to find? And why keep it secret from the rest of the royal family? Camilla decided to take both items to her private study to examine them more carefully. She wanted to understand what Elizabeth had intended before involving anyone else. The weight of responsibility felt enormous as she carried what could potentially be priceless royal treasures through the castle corridors. Unbeknownst to Camilla, her movements through the castle were being observed. Royal Guard Captain James Morrison had been conducting his regular security rounds when he noticed the Queen Consort emerging from the late Queen's quarters, carrying something substantial. His trained eye immediately registered that she was transporting items that hadn't been logged or documented by the official estate inventory team Captain Morrison had served the royal family faithfully for over 15 years. His duty was clear: protect the crown and its assets at all costs. Any unauthorized removal of items from the late Queen's chambers would need to be reported, regardless of who was involved. The royal protocol was strict about this matter, designed to prevent any possibility of theft or misappropriation of crown assets. He watched as Camilla disappeared into her private wing of the castle, clearly intending to examine whatever she had discovered in private. Morrison faced a difficult decision. Should he immediately alert his superiors about what he had witnessed? Or should he give the Queen Consort the benefit of the doubt and approach her directly first? The captain knew that raising an alarm could create a scandal that might damage the monarchy's reputation. But failing to report a potential security breach could cost him his career and potentially result in the loss of invaluable royal artifacts. The weight of his duty pressed heavily on his shoulders as he considered his next move. Meanwhile, in her private study, Camilla sat staring at the mysterious jewelry box and the sealed envelope. She understood that opening these items could change everything. Whatever the late Queen had hidden away was meant for her eyes, but she also knew that royal protocol demanded transparency in matters involving crown property. The afternoon light was fading as both Camilla and Captain Morrison grappled with their respective dilemmas, neither aware of how their paths were about to intersect in a way that would shake the very foundations of the palace. Captain Morrison spent a sleepless night wrestling with his conscience. By dawn, he had made his decision. His oath to protect the crown meant he couldn't ignore what he had witnessed, regardless of the personal consequences. With heavy steps, he made his way to the office of Sir Edward Whitfield, the palace's head of security. Sir Edward was a stern man in his 60s who had overseen royal security for nearly 3 decades. He had witnessed scandals, crises, and sensitive situations that would make headlines around the world if they ever became public. When Captain Morrison knocked on his door that morning, requesting an urgent private meeting, Sir Edward knew something serious was about to unfold. Morrison carefully explained what he had observed the previous day. He described Camilla's discovery in the late Queen's chambers and her subsequent removal of unidentified items. Sir Edward listened without interruption, his expression growing more grave with each detail. When Morrison finished his report, the room fell into heavy silence. Sir Edward understood the delicate nature of the situation immediately. Accusing the Queen Consort of any wrongdoing was not a matter to be taken lightly. Yet the protocols surrounding royal assets were established for good reason. Every item in the royal collection was part of Britain's national heritage, and proper procedures had to be followed regardless of rank or title. After careful consideration, Sir Edward decided they needed to approach this matter with extreme discretion. He would personally speak with Queen Camilla before involving anyone else. If there was an innocent explanation for what had occurred, they could resolve the matter quietly. However, if something more serious was at play, they would need to follow proper procedures to protect both the crown and themselves. Meanwhile, Camilla had finally found the courage to open the sealed envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from Queen Elizabeth, dated just 2 months before her passing. The letter began with warm words of welcome to the family and acknowledgement of Camilla's dedication to Charles and the monarchy. But then it revealed something extraordinary. The late Queen wrote about a collection of jewelry that had belonged to Queen Victoria, pieces that had been kept separate from the official crown jewels for over a century. These items were considered too personal and sentimental for public display, but too valuable to be forgotten. Elizabeth explained that she had maintained this secret collection as a private trust, passing down the responsibility through selected family members. According to the letter, Camilla was now the designated guardian of these treasures. The late Queen had observed Camilla's character over the years and believed she possessed the discretion and wisdom necessary to continue this hidden tradition. The jewelry box contained not just the Victorian pieces, but also detailed documentation about their history and significance. Camilla's hands shook as she opened the jewelry box for the first time. Inside, nestled in custom-fitted compartments, were pieces of breathtaking beauty. A diamond necklace that had belonged to Queen Victoria herself, emerald earrings gifted by Prince Albert, and a magnificent sapphire brooch that had been worn at Victoria's coronation. Each piece was accompanied by a small card detailing its provenance and importance. The estimated value of the collection was staggering, but its historical significance was immeasurable. These weren't just valuable objects, they were tangible links to the monarchy's most important era. The late Queen had entrusted Camilla with preserving this legacy for future generations, but she had also placed her in an incredibly difficult position. As Camilla absorbed the magnitude of what she had inherited, a knock came at her study door. Her private secretary announced that Sir Edward Whitfield was requesting an urgent audience. Camilla's blood ran cold. She quickly closed the jewelry box and placed both it and the letter in her desk drawer. Whatever Sir Edward wanted to discuss, she wasn't prepared to reveal the secret that Elizabeth had entrusted to her. When Sir Edward entered the room, his usually composed demeanor seemed slightly strained. He explained that there had been concerns raised about items being removed from the late Queen's chambers, without proper documentation. He spoke carefully, watching Camilla's face for any reaction that might reveal her thoughts. Camilla felt trapped between honoring the late Queen's wishes and dealing with the immediate crisis before her. She couldn't reveal the truth about the secret collection without potentially exposing a tradition that had been carefully guarded for generations. Yet she also couldn't simply deny what had happened when Sir Edward clearly had reliable information about her actions. The tension in the room was palpable as both individuals tried to navigate this unprecedented situation, each bound by their own sense of duty and loyalty to the crown. Camilla chose her words carefully as she faced Sir Edward's probing questions. She acknowledged that she had discovered some personal items in the late Queen's chambers, but explained that they appeared to be intended for her specifically. She couldn't provide more details without consulting with King Charles first, she insisted, as the matter involved sensitive family considerations. Sir Edward found himself in an impossible position. He couldn't simply accept Camilla's vague explanation, yet he also couldn't pressure the Queen Consort too aggressively without risking his own career. The protocols were clear, but the politics were complex. He requested that Camilla provide a detailed inventory of what she had found within 24 hours, giving her time to consult with the king while maintaining official procedures. After Sir Edward left, Camilla immediately contacted King Charles, who was attending to official duties in Scotland. She carefully explained the situation over a secure phone line, describing both her discovery and the subsequent investigation that had been triggered. Charles listened with growing concern, understanding immediately how delicate the circumstances had become. King Charles was well aware of his mother's tendency to maintain certain private traditions. Though he hadn't known about this particular secret collection, he recognized that Camilla was caught between competing loyalties and needed his support to navigate the crisis. They agreed that he would return to Windsor immediately to help resolve the situation before it escalated further. Meanwhile, word of the investigation had begun to spread through the palace staff in the way that sensitive information always does in closed communities. Captain Morrison found himself the subject of curious glances and whispered conversations. Some staff members praised his adherence to duty, while others questioned whether he should have handled the matter more discreetly. Sir Edward convened a small team of trusted advisors to assess the situation. This group included the palace's legal counsel, the keeper of the privy purse who managed royal finances, and the deputy private secretary who handled sensitive family matters. Each brought their own perspective to the complex web of legal, financial, and political considerations surrounding the case. The legal counsel emphasized that any items of significant value found in royal residences were presumed to be crown property unless proven otherwise. The financial implications were substantial, as undocumented valuable items could affect everything from insurance policies to inheritance taxes. The deputy private secretary worried about the potential for media leaks and the damage such a scandal could cause to the monarchy's reputation. As the team deliberated, they discovered that the late Queen's estate inventory was still incomplete. The sheer volume of her personal possessions meant that cataloging everything was an enormous undertaking that would continue for months. This raised the possibility that other significant items might be discovered that weren't in official records, potentially creating similar situations in the future. Camilla spent the evening rereading Queen Elizabeth's letter, searching for any guidance about how to handle such circumstances. The late Queen had written about the importance of discretion, but hadn't provided specific instructions for dealing with official inquiries. Camilla wondered if Elizabeth had anticipated that this moment might arise and had trusted her successors to find the right path forward. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on Camilla's shoulders. She could reveal the truth about the secret collection, which would satisfy the official investigation, but potentially expose a tradition that had been carefully protected for generations. Alternatively, she could continue to withhold information, which might resolve the immediate crisis but could lead to more serious consequences if the truth emerged later. King Charles arrived at Windsor late that evening, and he and Camilla spent hours discussing their options. Charles shared what little he knew about his mother's private arrangements and helped Camilla understand the broader context of royal traditions that operated outside official channels. He assured her that they would find a solution that honored both his mother's wishes and their current responsibilities. However, their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from Sir Edward. The investigation team had discovered something troubling while reviewing security footage from the palace's extensive camera system. The recording showed that Camilla wasn't the only person who had accessed the late Queen's chambers recently. Someone else had been there just days before Camilla's discovery, and this individual hadn't been authorized to enter those rooms. This revelation changed everything. What had begun as a straightforward investigation into Camilla's actions had now become a potential security breach involving unknown parties. The possibility that someone else might have discovered or removed items from the late Queen's chambers added new urgency to the situation and raised questions about whether the secret collection was still complete. The security footage revealed a shocking truth that no one had anticipated. The unauthorized visitor to Queen Elizabeth's chambers was Lady Margaret Ashworth, the late Queen's longtime personal assistant and trusted confidant. Margaret had served the royal family for over 40 years and was considered above suspicion by everyone who knew her. Sir Edward immediately ordered Lady Margaret to be brought in for questioning. When confronted with the video evidence, the elderly woman broke down in tears and confessed to something that stunned everyone present. She revealed that Queen Elizabeth had given her specific instructions just weeks before her death, asking her to ensure that certain personal items were properly transferred to their intended recipients after her passing. Lady Margaret explained that the late Queen had been concerned about the formal estate process and wanted to ensure that some of her most personal gifts wouldn't get lost in bureaucratic procedures. Elizabeth had specifically mentioned items hidden in her private chambers that were meant for Camilla, but she had also asked Margaret to retrieve other items for different family members. According to Margaret's tearful account, she had visited the chambers several times to collect various personal items that the Queen had designated for specific people. These included letters, photographs, and small jewelry pieces that held sentimental rather than monetary value. She had been acting on direct orders from the late Queen, but had been sworn to secrecy about the entire arrangement. This revelation created a new crisis for the investigation team. If the late Queen had indeed orchestrated a private distribution of her personal items outside official channels, it raised questions about what else might have been given away without documentation. More importantly, it meant that Camilla's discovery of the jewelry collection might be just one part of a much larger secret arrangement. King Charles was both relieved and troubled by this news. He was glad that Camilla wasn't the only person involved in unusual circumstances, but he was also concerned about the broader implications of his mother's secret instructions. As the new monarch, he needed to understand the full scope of what had been arranged and ensure that no valuable crown property had been inappropriately distributed. Sir Edward expanded the investigation to include a comprehensive review of all items that Lady Margaret had removed from the late Queen's chambers. She provided detailed lists of everything she had taken and where each item had been delivered. Most were indeed personal mementos of little monetary value, but the investigation revealed several items that should have been included in the official estate inventory. Meanwhile, Camilla made a difficult decision. She realized that the discovery of Lady Margaret's involvement provided an opportunity to reveal the truth about the jewelry collection without betraying the late Queen's confidence entirely. She could frame her own discovery as part of the same arrangement that Margaret had been executing, which would explain her actions while protecting the secret tradition. Camilla met with King Charles and Sir Edward together, finally revealing the existence of the jewelry box and the letter from Queen Elizabeth. She explained that the late Queen had apparently arranged for her to receive these items as part of a private family tradition, similar to the arrangements made through Lady Margaret for other family members. The revelation of the jewelry collection's existence sent shockwaves through the investigation team. The value and historical significance of the pieces far exceeded anything that Lady Margaret had been asked to distribute. Sir Edward immediately requested that expert appraisers be brought in to assess the collection and determine its proper classification within the Crown's assets. King Charles supported Camilla's explanation while privately grappling with the enormity of what his mother had done. The secret collection represented millions of pounds in value and centuries of royal history. The decision about how to handle such items would set important precedents for how the monarchy managed its vast and complex heritage. The investigation took an unexpected turn when the appraisers made a startling discovery. While examining the jewelry pieces, they found that each item bore small, discrete markings that weren't immediately visible to the casual observer. These markings appeared to be a coding system that might indicate the item's official status within the royal collection. Further, research revealed that these markings corresponded to a catalog system that had been used during Queen Victoria's reign to distinguish between official crown property and personal royal possessions. This discovery suggested that the secret collection might actually have a legitimate legal status that had been maintained through generations of careful record-keeping. The investigation team realized they were dealing with something far more complex than a simple case of unauthorized item removal. They were potentially uncovering a parallel system of royal asset management that had operated alongside official procedures for over a century. The implications for understanding the true extent and organization of the royal collection were staggering. As word of these developments reached the highest levels of the palace administration, pressure mounted to resolve the situation quickly and quietly. The possibility that major royal assets had been operating outside official oversight for generations raised serious questions about institutional controls and public accountability. that could become politically damaging if they became public knowledge. The discovery of the Victorian coding system prompted an urgent search through the royal archives for historical documentation that might explain the secret collection's origins. Royal historians and archivists worked around the clock to piece together records that had been scattered across different storage facilities and filing systems over the decades. Dr. Helena Worthington, the palace's chief historian, made a breakthrough when she uncovered a series of private letters between Queen Victoria and her trusted advisor, Sir Henry Ponsonby. These letters, dating from the 1880s, revealed that Victoria had indeed created a separate category of royal possessions that she designated as personal trust items, distinct from official crown property. According to the historical documents, Queen Victoria had been concerned about maintaining certain family treasures that held deep personal significance, but weren't appropriate for inclusion in the formal crown jewels. She had established a private system for passing these items down through selected family members, with each generation's guardian responsible for maintaining both the collection and its secrecy. The letters revealed that this tradition had continued through subsequent monarchs, with each ruler adding their own personal treasures to the collection while maintaining strict confidentiality about its existence. Queen Elizabeth II had apparently been the latest guardian of this centuries-old tradition, carefully selecting Camilla as her successor based on years of observation and trust. This historical evidence transformed the entire investigation. What had initially appeared to be a potential theft or misappropriation was now revealed as part of a legitimate royal tradition with deep historical roots. The coding system on the jewelry pieces matched records from Victoria's private inventory, confirming their special status within the royal collection. King Charles found himself facing a momentous decision about how to handle this inherited responsibility. The tradition had clearly been important to his mother and previous monarchs, but operating such a system in the modern era raised questions about transparency and accountability that previous generations hadn't needed to consider. Sir Edward and his investigation team now had to reassess everything they had discovered. The existence of a parallel asset management system that had operated for over a century without detection highlighted significant gaps in the palace's understanding of its own collections. They needed to determine what other similar arrangements might exist and ensure proper oversight without destroying valuable historical traditions. The legal implications were complex and far-reaching. While the historical evidence supported the legitimacy of the secret collection, modern laws governing royal assets and public accountability required careful consideration. The palace's legal counsel worked to determine how such arrangements could be maintained within current regulatory frameworks. Camilla felt a mixture of relief and overwhelming responsibility as the full scope of her inheritance became clear. She wasn't just the guardian of a few valuable jewelry pieces. She was now the custodian of a tradition that connected her directly to Queen Victoria and every monarch since. The weight of this historical continuity was both humbling and daunting. Lady Margaret's role in the situation became clearer as well. She had been aware of the secret collection's existence for decades and had helped Queen Elizabeth maintain it throughout her reign. Her unauthorized visits to the late Queen's chambers had been motivated by a desire to ensure the tradition's continuation, even though she hadn't been specifically instructed to retrieve the jewelry collection herself. The investigation team discovered that the late Queen had left detailed instructions for Lady Margaret about various personal bequests, but she had separately arranged for Camilla to discover the jewelry collection on her own. Elizabeth had apparently believed that the discovery needed to feel natural and private, rather than being presented as a formal inheritance. As the scope of the secret tradition became apparent, other royal family members began to come forward with their own stories of mysterious gifts and instructions from the late Queen. Princess Anne revealed that she had received a private letter directing her to certain items in the Queen's equestrian collection. Prince Edward had been given access to a private safe containing historical documents about the monarchy's role in Commonwealth development. These revelations painted a picture of Queen Elizabeth as someone who had spent her final years carefully orchestrating the preservation and transmission of royal history and traditions that existed outside official channels. She had apparently identified different family members to serve as guardians of different aspects of this hidden heritage, ensuring its continuation while maintaining necessary secrecy. The investigation, that had begun with suspicions about theft, had evolved into a fascinating exploration of hidden royal history and the complex ways that monarchy maintains its traditions across generations. The palace found itself grappling with questions about how to honor these ancient practices while meeting modern expectations for transparency and accountability. King Charles convened a private family meeting to discuss how to proceed. The decision about whether to continue the secret tradition or integrate it into official royal procedures would affect not only the current generation, but also set precedents for how future monarchs would handle the monarchy's vast and complex heritage. The private family meeting took place in the Oak Room at Windsor Castle, away from the formal settings usually associated with royal business. King Charles, Queen Camilla, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and Prince William gathered to discuss the unprecedented situation that had emerged from what began as a simple security concern. Charles opened the discussion by acknowledging the complexity of their situation. The royal family needed to decide whether to maintain the secret tradition that had operated for over a century, or to integrate these historical arrangements into the official systems that governed royal assets. Each choice carried significant implications for both the monarchy's future and its relationship with the British public. Princess Anne spoke first, expressing her belief that their mother's careful planning deserved respect and continuation. She argued that the late Queen had demonstrated wisdom in maintaining certain traditions outside official channels, preserving aspects of royal heritage that might otherwise be lost to bureaucratic processes or public scrutiny that could diminish their significance. Prince Edward took a more cautious position, acknowledging the tradition's historical value, while expressing concern about the legal and political risks of maintaining secret asset arrangements in the modern era. He pointed out that public expectations for transparency had changed dramatically since Queen Victoria's time, and continuing such practices could create serious problems if they were discovered by the media or government auditors. Prince William offered a generational perspective, suggesting that the family needed to find ways to honor their mother's intentions while adapting the tradition to contemporary standards. He proposed that they might be able to maintain the spirit of the secret collection while bringing it under some form of official oversight that would protect both its integrity and the monarchy's reputation. Camilla listened carefully to each perspective while grappling with her own feelings about the enormous responsibility she had inherited. She explained how discovering the jewelry collection had made her feel deeply connected to the long line of queens who had preceded her. But she also understood the practical challenges of maintaining such arrangements in secret. The family's discussion was interrupted by Sir Edward, who brought urgent news that would force an immediate decision. The palace's press office had received inquiries from a tabloid newspaper about unauthorized activities in the late Queen's chambers. Someone had leaked information about the investigation, though the exact details of what the media knew remained unclear. This development transformed the situation from a private family matter into a potential public crisis. If news of the secret collection became public without proper context and explanation, it could be portrayed as evidence of royal secrecy, financial impropriety, or worse. The family needed to decide immediately how to respond to media pressure while protecting both the tradition and the monarchy's reputation. King Charles made the difficult decision to bring the secret collection under official oversight while preserving its special status within the royal heritage. This approach would allow the tradition to continue in a modified form while ensuring proper documentation and legal compliance. Camilla would remain the collection's guardian, but her role would now be officially recognized and supported by palace procedures. The decision required immediate action on multiple fronts. The palace's communications team began preparing statements that would acknowledge the discovery of historical items while framing the story in terms of ongoing efforts to catalog and preserve the late Queen's extensive personal collection. The legal team worked to establish proper documentation for the secret collection that would satisfy regulatory requirements without compromising its historical significance. Sir Edward coordinated with security personnel to ensure that all aspects of the investigation were properly documented and that any remaining questions about unauthorized access to royal chambers were definitively resolved. Captain Morrison, who had initiated the investigation by reporting his observations, was commended for his diligence while being sworn to secrecy about the collection's specific details. Lady Margaret was formally recognized for her decades of loyal service and her role in executing the late Queen's final wishes. Her actions, which had initially appeared suspicious, were now understood as the faithful completion of a trusted responsibility. She was asked to provide detailed information about the late Queen's other private arrangements to ensure that nothing important was overlooked. The royal historians and archivists were tasked with conducting a comprehensive review of the palace's collections to identify any other items or arrangements that might have similar historical status. This process would take months to complete, but was necessary to ensure that the royal family had a complete understanding of their inherited responsibilities. As news of the investigation began to leak to the media, the palace prepared for intense scrutiny of how royal assets were managed and documented. The story would inevitably raise questions about transparency and accountability that would require careful navigation to avoid damaging the monarchy's relationship with Parliament and the public. The family meeting concluded with a renewed sense of unity and purpose. Despite the challenges ahead, they had discovered that Queen Elizabeth's final gift to them wasn't just the secret collection itself, but also an opportunity to strengthen their commitment to preserving royal traditions while adapting to contemporary expectations. The crisis had revealed both the complexity of their inherited responsibilities and their ability to work together to honor their mother's legacy while protecting the institution she had served so faithfully. The palace's carefully crafted response to media inquiries successfully transformed what could have been a damaging scandal into a positive story about the ongoing discovery and preservation of royal heritage. The official statement emphasized the late Queen's careful attention to ensuring that historically significant items were properly preserved and passed down to future generations. The media narrative focused on the remarkable discovery of previously unknown treasures from Queen Victoria's era and the touching story of Queen Elizabeth's final efforts to secure important family heirlooms for her successors. The secret collection was presented as evidence of the monarchy's deep commitment to preserving British history and culture for future generations. Public reaction was overwhelmingly positive, with many expressing admiration for the late Queen's thoughtfulness and the current royal family's dedication to transparency in handling the discovery. Royal historians and jewelry experts who were permitted to examine selected pieces from the collection provided commentary that emphasized the item's historical significance and the importance of their preservation. Captain Morrison found himself quietly celebrated within palace circles for his adherence to duty that had ultimately led to the revelation of this important historical treasure. His decision to report what he had observed, despite the potential personal and political risks, was recognized as exemplifying the highest standards of service to the Crown. Sir Edward used the incident as an opportunity to review and strengthen palace security and asset management procedures. New protocols were established to ensure that any future discoveries of historical significance would be handled with appropriate care and documentation while respecting the sensitivity of royal family traditions. Lady Margaret was granted a special audience with King Charles, who personally thanked her for her decades of faithful service and her crucial role in executing his mother's final wishes. Her knowledge of the palace's informal traditions and practices proved invaluable in helping the family understand the full scope of their inherited responsibilities. The comprehensive review of royal collections initiated by the incident led to several other interesting discoveries, though none as dramatic as the secret jewelry collection. Various personal items, documents, and small treasures were found throughout different royal residences, each carefully placed by the late Queen to be discovered by specific family members at appropriate times. Queen Camilla embraced her new role as guardian of the secret collection with grace and determination. She worked closely with palace historians to document each piece properly while maintaining the tradition's essential character. The collection was moved to a secure location where it could be properly preserved while remaining accessible for private family occasions and historical research. The jewelry pieces themselves were occasionally worn by Camilla at private family gatherings, maintaining Queen Elizabeth's vision of these treasures as living links to royal history, rather than museum pieces locked away from view. Each wearing was carefully documented to preserve the historical record, while honoring the tradition of personal connection to these remarkable artifacts. King Charles established a new position within the palace hierarchy, keeper of private royal traditions. This role would ensure that similar situations could be handled more smoothly in the future, while providing official oversight for arrangements that operated outside normal procedures. The position would be filled by someone with both historical knowledge and complete discretion. The incident strengthened the bond between Charles and Camilla as they navigated their first major challenge as monarch and consort. Their ability to work together under pressure while honoring both tradition and contemporary expectations demonstrated their readiness to lead the monarchy through whatever challenges the future might bring. Princess Anne and Prince Edward each assumed formal roles in preserving and maintaining their respective portions of the late Queen's legacy, creating a network of family members dedicated to ensuring that important traditions would continue while adapting to modern requirements. This distributed approach reflected Queen Elizabeth's wisdom in recognizing different family members' unique strengths and interests. The investigation, that had begun with suspicions and concerns, ended with a deeper understanding of the monarchy's complex relationship with its own history. The royal family emerged from the crisis with renewed appreciation for Queen Elizabeth's careful planning and foresight in preparing them for their inherited responsibilities. Months later, as Camilla sat in her private study examining one of Queen Victoria's letters that had been found with the jewelry collection, she reflected on how the discovery had changed her understanding of her role within the royal family. She was no longer just queen consort. She was also a link in an unbroken chain of guardianship that stretched back over a century. The secret collection remained secret in the sense that its specific contents and location were not public knowledge, but its existence had been acknowledged and properly integrated into the palace's official procedures. This balance between transparency and discretion became a model for how the royal family could honor its traditions while meeting contemporary expectations for accountability. The story of the discovered treasure became part of royal family lore, told privately among family members as an example of Queen Elizabeth's wisdom and the importance of maintaining traditions while adapting to changing times. It served as a reminder that the monarchy's greatest treasures weren't just the valuable objects it preserved, but the relationships and responsibilities that connected past, present, and future generations in service to the crown and the nation.